That in the elevator that skipped one floor, part 1. The first thing the technician noticed was not an error. There were no alarms blinking red on the control panel. No emergency shutdowns, no warnings scrolling across the diagnostic screen. Every indicator showed the same result: system normal. That conclusion made his stomach tighten. Elevators were built on certainty. They moved or they stopped. They aligned with a floor or they stayed sealed between them. There was no acceptable state in which doors could open where no floor existed. And yet the log file on his screen said that was exactly what had happened. At 8:41 a.m., Elevator B had opened its doors between floors 12 and 14, not at a floor between them. The building stood near the edge of downtown, a tall column of glass and steel that reflected the city rather than belonging to it. During the day, it blended into the skyline. At night, it glowed faintly, each lit window giving the illusion of life even when most of the apartments were empty. 22 floors, 4 high-speed elevators, 2 underground parking levels, and, officially, no 13th floor. The omission was deliberate. Developers insisted on it. Marketing backed it up. Focus groups responded negatively to the number 13. People didn't like living on it, didn't like passing it, didn't like being reminded of it. So the displays jumped from 12 to 14. They always had, until the morning they didn't. Victor Hale entered the lobby at 8:39 a.m. Security footage showed him pushing through the revolving doors with practiced ease. He carried a coffee in his left hand and his phone in his right. His pace was steady, his posture relaxed. There was nothing remarkable about him, no distinctive clothing, no visible anxiety, no hesitation. Victor did not speak to the guard at the desk. He didn't glance at the security cameras. He walked directly toward Elevator B, as if drawn there by habit. The elevator chimed softly. The doors slid open. Victor stepped inside alone. The doors closed behind him. Inside the elevator, the lighting was bright but impersonal. The camera mounted near the ceiling distorted perspective slightly, flattening the space and exaggerating angles. Victor pressed the button for 14. The button lit up. The elevator began to rise. The display counted upward. 258. Victor leaned back against the wall and lowered his gaze to his phone. His thumb scrolled automatically, not really reading anything. His mind was elsewhere, drifting through the familiar routines of a morning that felt identical to every other. The elevator passed the 10th floor, then the 11th. At 12, it slowed just enough to be noticeable. That was when Victor looked up. Later, investigators would replay this moment again and again. They would slow the footage down, freeze frames, zoom in on his face. They would look for fear, surprise, hesitation, anything that might explain what happened next. They found none. The display flickered. For less than a second, the number 13 appeared. The doors opened. Victor stepped forward. Not cautiously, not in confusion. He moved as if responding to something expected, as if the elevator were not malfunctioning, but finally doing what it was supposed to do. The doors closed again. The elevator continued upward. At 8:41 a.m., Elevator B arrived at the 14th floor. The doors opened. The cabin was empty. At first no one noticed. Elevators arrived empty all the time. People exited on different floors. Cameras missed moments. Memory filled gaps incorrectly. The system logged a normal arrival. No alerts were triggered. Victor Hale was simply gone. Concern came later, quietly. Victor's office called when he didn't arrive by 9. His phone went unanswered. Messages stacked up unread. Security reviewed footage casually, expecting to find him stepping out on 12 or doubling back to the lobby. They didn't. The footage showed Victor entering the building, entering Elevator B. And nothing else. No exit, no reappearance. The guard rewound the clip and watched it again, then again. Then he leaned back in his chair and felt something cold settle in his chest. By noon, Victor's phone was offline. By evening, his apartment door remained locked from the inside. His car was still in the underground garage. Victor Hale had not left the building. Cedar Maintenance was called the next morning. They inspected cables, motors, and door sensors. Everything passed. No wear, no damage, no abnormal readings. When that failed to explain anything, they accessed the raw logs. That was when the technician found the pause. Between floors 12 and 14, 9.6 seconds. During that interval, the system recorded the doors as open, not opening, open. That distinction mattered. Doors could not be open unless the elevator was aligned with a floor. Every safety protocol existed to enforce that rule. Yet the software insisted the doors had opened anyway, into nothing. 3 days later, Elevator B was still in service. Management discussed shutting it down but found no justification. One missing tenant did not prove a systemic failure. Buildings did not halt operations based on uncertainty. At 10:18 p.m., Alina Perez entered the lobby. Oh, Alina worked late. Everyone knew that. Security staff recognized her. Cleaning crews nodded as she passed. She often returned home exhausted, her thoughts already elsewhere. She stepped into Elevator B, alone, pressed 14. The doors closed. The elevator rose. 258. Alina stared at her reflection in the mirrored wall, barely registering her own face. Her mind replayed unfinished tasks, emails she should have answered, reports she had signed too quickly. The display reached 12. It slowed. The screen flickered. The doors opened. Alina froze. She did not step out immediately. She leaned forward slightly, looked. Her expression changed. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. A faint smile appeared on her face. She stepped forward. The doors closed. The elevator continued upward. Although this time, the camera captured something new. For one corrupted frame, less than a blink, there was something beyond the open doors. Not the elevator shaft, a hallway, narrow, unlit, concrete walls stretching farther than the lens could focus. And at the far end of it, a human shape stood still, waiting. The elevator that skipped 1 floor, part 2. Mara Ionescu did not sleep the night after speaking to Daniel Coe. She replayed his words in her head, not as testimony, but as diagnosis. It knew why I was alone. Elevators were not supposed to know anything. They followed commands. They responded to weight, direction, priority calls. They did not evaluate intent. They did not select passengers. And yet the pattern was no longer subtle. By the end of the week, Mara had identified 9 people who had experienced the doors opening between floors and chosen not to step out. All of them shared 2 traits. They had been alone, and each of them had, at some point in the past, corrected a mistake instead of ignoring it. A report filed late, a call made when it would have been easier not to, a signature refused, small acts, quiet ones, but completed. The disappearances followed the inverse pattern. Victor Hale had witnessed a hit and run and never reported it. Alina Perez had signed off on a safety inspection she knew was incomplete. The night guard who vanished next had disabled an alarm weeks earlier to avoid paperwork. None of them had broken the law outright. They had simply stopped caring at the point where caring required effort. Mara ordered a full stop on all elevator traffic in the building. Management protested. Tenants threatened legal action, but by then 3 more people had disappeared in nearby buildings. Buildings built by the same developer, serviced by the same elevator manufacturer. The problem was no longer isolated, it was replicating. The engineer's name surfaced in a forgotten archive. Elias Roth. elevator systems architect, retired 15 years earlier, dead for 10. He had specialized in transitional safety systems, the invisible moments when machines handed responsibility back to humans. His final paper had never been published. Title: Deferred Accountability in Automated Transit. In it, Roth argued that automation had made moral failure frictionless. Machines made it easy to move forward without reflection. He proposed a system that would introduce a pause, a moment between states, a space where unresolved responsibility would surface. Mara found the blueprint folded inside the archived submission. It showed no 13th floor. Instead, there was a buffer state, a non-spatial interval encoded into the control logic. Not a room, a decision window. The elevator did not create the space. The passenger did. And the system did not punish, it offered. If a passenger stepped out, they accepted the pause. If they did not, the elevator moved on. But those who stepped out never came back. When the first attempt to shut the system down failed, elevators rebooted, firmware reset, controllers replaced, the pause remained. Because it wasn't in the code, it was in the behavior. Mara volunteered to ride alone. She had a clean record, no unresolved reports, no ignored warnings. The elevator flickered. The doors began to open, then stopped. The system rejected her. The last disappearance happened 2 weeks later, a city inspector. Before entering the elevator, he sent a voice message to his daughter. "I knew," he said. "I just didn't want the delay." The elevator paused. The display did not show a number. It showed a word: stay. After that, the doors never opened again. Not between 12 and 14, not anywhere. But buildings across the city began reporting delays, elevators pausing, lights dimming, a sense of hesitation, as if the system was no longer local, as if it had learned something transferable. Mara resigned 3 months later. She stopped riding elevators whenever possible. She took stairs, escalators, anything that didn't pause and ask questions, because she understood now. The system didn't disappear. It scaled. And somewhere between floors, in a space that never needed a number, the doors are still opening. Not for everyone. Only for those who stopped caring when caring became inconvenient. End.